This is Bob Barr, and today we're going to be talking about Bob Barr's Laws of the Universe, number 69. The reason that this particular law is so important and actually so timely is because recent events have reminded probably all of us just how powerful the government is. Not only how powerful the government is, but how vindictive the government can be. Not only how powerful and vindictive the government can be, but also how many tools are available to the government if you get them mad at you. And that's the law that we want to keep in mind. Don't get the government mad at you because the government has subpoena power, they have lots of guns, and lots of your money that they can use to come after you. And as a matter of fact, if you think back to some recent events, it has become obvious that there's what you might call a corollary to this particular law of the universe. And that is that nowadays, even if you don't do something to get the government mad at you, so that it then can use these powers to get back at you, they will do so. So let's kind of start with that. All of us probably remember what happened last January 6th with the violent demonstration at the United States Capitol building, something that I certainly didn't want to see. None of us wanted to see that, and none of us condoned the few people that really did commit violent acts and destroy property. But what happened afterwards is really a perfect example of what government can do if they really want to get back at you. Now, this law of the universe isn't something new. I was just reminded of this by a good friend of mine the other day when we were talking about the ways that the government has available to it to go after you if they want to, through subpoena power, that is legal action, guns, they can come charging into your house, as they did with Roger Stone. You may remember that back in 2020, to arrest you. And of course, we do know that the government has lots of our money, including a lot of money that they just print up out of nowhere. But they have whatever money they need or believe they need. They have plenty of guns so they can force their way in, and they have legal power. I was thinking the other day, as a matter of fact, my friend had reminded me of this. Back after 9/11, the Bush administration decided that they needed to acquire access to phone records, communication records, electronic communication records that were in the hands of the telecom companies. And the law didn't allow for them to do that. And unfortunately, almost all of the big carriers decided to give the government access to their customer records, even though the government didn't have a warrant to do so or proper authority under the law to do so. It actually was illegal under an old 1978 law called the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, or FISA. But anyway, we don't need to get into the weeds on that. But what I was reminded of recently is that there was one particular CEO for a telecom company, Joseph Naccio. And he was the CEO of a telecom company called Quest. And all Joseph Naccio did when the Bush administration came to him and said, turn over to us all of your customer information, because we're looking for terrorists and terrorist connections. The only thing that Joseph Naccio said to the government was, show me a warrant. I mean, show me that you have the legal authority to do that. Well, he got the government mad at him. And another thing that the government has, in addition to this extensive array of tools that they can use to come after you if they do get mad at you, is they have a long memory. And what they decided to do with Mr. Nacho, because he did not readily just turn over information on his company's phone records on their customers without seeing legal authority to do so, is they came after him. They found some other reason to come after him, convicted him, and he spent actual time in the federal prison. More recently, many of you may remember the name Paul Manafort. Paul Manafort, who for a brief period of time back in 2016 headed Donald Trump's campaign, presidential campaign, he got the government mad at him. And what they did is they used their power to go back into all of his financial records and company records and so forth, and they found some things that they could go after him for. So the point here is that if the government wants to come after you, they'll find a reason to do so. I mean, there are so many federal laws. There are probably in the neighborhood of between 4,000 and 5,000 federal laws with criminal penalties attached to them. And that's even before you get to all of the regulatory offenses. There's a book by a very well-known criminal defense lawyer, Harvey Silverglate, called 3 Felonies a Day. And the premise of his book is that it's virtually impossible for anybody in the country to go through an entire day without inadvertently committing 3 felonies. I mean, we have so many federal, state, local laws that have criminal penalties attached to them that if the government wants to get you, they'll find a reason, they'll conjure a reason to do so. And they do have the tools that can make lives miserable. So that's our law number 69. But there's a corollary to Bob Barr's Laws of the Universe, law number 69, and that is, even if you don't get the government mad at you, they will find ways to come after you. Perfect example, going back again to January 6th, 2021, and the demonstrations that unfortunately turned violent at the U.S. Capitol. The FBI, as we learned shortly thereafter, decided that they needed some help to identify some of the individuals that they believe had violated the law in being at the Capitol or engaging in some of the activities there. They decided to surveil people who were in the area around the Capitol. And of course, as we all know, with these things that we all use to one degree or another nowadays, it's very easy for the government technologically easy for them, that is, to find where you are based on this device, and particularly any particular time of the day or night. They do need a warrant to do so if they want to come find out where you in particular were at a particular time. But more often than not, we're finding out nowadays, the government really doesn't want to let some technicality like the Fourth Amendment or having to get a warrant stand in the way of protecting the country, protecting all of us. And we're even seeing now the government in cahoots with banks, financial institutions, some of which are more than happy to turn over information on their customers to the government. Now, there have been laws going back to the 1970s, actually, that provide or require banks and other financial institutions, casinos, for example, that require them to turn over information to the Treasury Department if somebody at the bank spots something that they think is suspicious. So they fill out you guessed it, a suspicious activity report. Send that into the Treasury Department. Bank of America, this is all public and public reports, media reporting. After January 6, 2021 at the Capitol, they decided that they would send to the government, give the government information that they had on their customers who might have been in the Washington, D.C. area in the vicinity of the U.S. Capitol building on January 6th, or the day before, or the day after, and who might have used a Bank of America ATM machine, or might have used a credit card issued by Bank of America to pay for a hotel room or a meal on January 5th, 6th, or 7th. That would constitute evidence that the person might have participated in the demonstrations, the activities at the U.S. Capitol building on January 6th. It doesn't end there. Bob Barr's Laws of the Universe, number 69, that you better be very careful not to get the government mad at you because of these tools that they have available to them to come after you. Most recently, or more recently, the Treasury Department, once again, has decided that they want to get access to customer information if individuals use Bitcoin or other so-called cryptocurrencies. The government has never liked Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies because it's impossible to control people that use that medium of exchange. Their most recent gambit, the Treasury Department that is, to start controlling individuals who use cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, is to publish a regulation that requires that any financial institution that accepts transactions in a cryptocurrency, such as Bitcoin, that the financial institution has to gather personal information on that customer, retain it, and also that if there is any suspicious activity, who knows what suspicious activity is? To one person, it might be suspicious. To another person, perfectly acceptable. That then is turned over to the government as a suspicious activity. So it's very important in sum that we keep in mind, all of us keep in mind, the various tools that the government has available to it to find out what we're doing, how we're doing it, when we're doing it. They have legal process. They have surveillance powers that we know have been seriously abused over recent years and continue to be to this day. They have guns, that is, force that they can use to come after you. And they have as much money as they want to spend to come after you. And in order to address these problems that we've identified in the updated corollary to the Law of the Universe, number 69, now we know that the government will come after you using those tools, and they have a long memory, even if you haven't done anything that you think will get them mad at you. So keep in mind, as you move through your day, particularly with regard to financial transactions, pay attention and take into account I said, I don't like saying this, and none of us like saying this, that you have to be careful of the government, even in a banking transaction or using your ATM card. But don't ever forget that every time you engage in one of those transactions, creates a record that is subject to, and more likely than not, to be reported to and retained by the government. This is Bob Barr signing off on Bob Barr's Laws of the Universe, and looking forward to seeing you all again next time.